Hello, I'm Jo Kiminade and I'm talking to John Knorr, founder and CEO of the Uglii system. Now, John, through our series of interviews, we've talked a lot about how good Uglii is for business, but today we're going to focus on the economic benefits of Uglii and how governments should use the Uglii system as a stimulant.
Well, Jo, there's a lot of features of the Uglii system. Certainly stimulating the economy is one thing. The system has the capacity to accelerate business activity because it's providing faster and smarter decision-making processes for buyers so that they can make buying decisions more intelligently and quicker, which means that they do things faster, which means that there's more GDP produced in, say, a year. So the system is about accelerating economic activity in an economy. So there's that aspect of it, okay? So
Right.
that's pretty important for
Sure.
most countries at the moment around the world. In fact, I'd say all countries. I can't think of a country that where that's not applicable at the moment.
Okay.
So there's that aspect of it. The problem that governments have, or they think they have, is that accelerating the economy is going to cause inflation.
And that makes them nervous.
That makes them nervous because there's political implications for that.
Yep.
What the Uglii system does, of course, is introduce greater competition into the economy, which of course has the effect of reducing prices, which takes the inflationary pressures out of the economy. So what Uglii is a system that while stimulating the economy and taking the inflationary pressures out of the economy through greater competition, allows the government to accelerate the economy faster than it otherwise would without inflation becoming an issue.
Right.
Governments in China and India have recognised the advantage of Uglii for doing this, so they have some expectations that...
They've had substantial growth in their economies, haven't
Well,
they?
they have substantial growth in their economies, and China in particular runs up against this problem of inflation happening, which they've then got to cool the economy off, and that's not a good thing because and to lower the rate of expansion of the economy. And that interferes with a whole lot of programs in the Chinese economy. They need that rapid growth in their economy to achieve their economic and social objectives in that economy. So from that government's point of view, Uglii is a pretty powerful system because it simply allows that economy to run faster.
Sure. Right.
So we think there's the same effect. There will be the same effect right throughout the whole global economy, and even in countries where they're worried about deflation. There's some countries in Europe where they're seriously worried about prices collapsing and causing problems, like we've seen in Japan for a long time, 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
The Uglii system helps with that because it's first a stimulatory system and then it's a deflationary system. So even in those countries where they're worried about deflation, the system will provide the stimulation and the acceleration that the economy needs.
Right. Now, what about the Australian economy? We're in Australia, so
Yep.
We're looking at the current government with substantial debt that could take up to 15 years to pay. How can Uglii help the Australian economy?
Yeah, well, the numbers that the government itself are putting out are fairly depressing, and that's probably going to see my life out. That we'll spend the rest of the time paying off debt, which is accumulated, which is fairly depressing from my point of view. But in reality, with the Uglii system operating in the economy, that gives the government more tools to use and to think about, and the Uglii system is going to be in the economy anyway. So it's not a matter of a government saying, look, yes, we're going to have Uglii in the economy. This is the internet, and the Uglii system is going to be there and operating in the economy. So what we're saying to governments, all governments, not just the Australian government, is look at the future reality of what the influences are going to be in your economy. There is a new dynamic coming into your economy, and it may come in quickly or it may come in slowly, but it will come.
Sure.
Because businesses need the benefits that the Uglii system provides in their economy.
Okay.
So governments need to start factoring in the Uglii effect into all of their calculations and projections and modelling.
Right.
Now, they need to do it now.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. And Uglii can also be used by governments for their procurement as well, which would save them money.
Yes, that's a different issue. The Uglii system is very powerful for procurement, we have relationships with more than 70 governments, and we're constantly talking to them about these matters and the effects of Uglii, and one of the things that they get excited about is procurement, because procurement is a problem for every government. We haven't got a relationship with a government who doesn't say procurement's a problem. Now, there's three areas of problem for governments. One is that procurement's a fairly laborious sort of process, and the Uglii system smartens that up. Secondly, it's difficult to get sufficient competition into procurement events, so governments tend to pay too much for the product or service that they're buying. And the third one is a hoary old problem of corruption in procurement, which is a problem everywhere.
Yes.
And of all the governments that we work with, we haven't come across a government that says corruption is not a problem in our economy.
Right.
Even the smartest governments who think that they've got their systems pretty well off pat know that they've still got a problem of corruption in their economy. So what we're saying is that our system will improve the performance of governments in procurement, so they're buying more for less, or the same amount for less money.
Yes.
And they'll get those savings. They're not necessarily equated with GDP, so in some ways it's taking the edge off GDP because they might be spending less than they would have before. But the importance of those processes is that there's more competition throughout the economy. Businesses have greater access to government procurement events.
Sure.
In fact, the system will actually sometimes deliver them the opportunity without them knowing about it. If they've set some of the processes in Uglii marketplace system to automatic, then they will automatically make offers to government procurement events where it suits their parameters.
Right.
So we think that is a very important and exciting opportunity for governments, and there's actually two aspects to that. One is the issue of government procurement itself, and the second area that we're discussing with governments is the issue of procurement by corporations in their economy. Now, the same problems with procurement in government happen in corporations.
Right.
Okay, these processes tend to be inefficient. They tend to be not as competitive as they should be, and they are often corrupt.
Right.
Now, what we're suggesting to governments is where businesses in the economy are audited, then we're suggesting to governments that they may consider making the Uglii procurement processes a requirement for procurement within those corporations. The reason for that is that we're saying that our processes will reduce input costs for businesses.
Okay.
If we reduce input costs for businesses, therefore we increase the profitability of those businesses. And if we increase the profitability of those businesses, there's benefits right across the economy.
Sure.
The business can employ more people because they've got more money to use.
Pay more tax.
They can pay more tax. Now, you're stealing my lines now.
Right.
They can pay more tax, and that's important for governments. More profitable business means more tax paid, okay, and that's very important. But there's also more money in those companies for reinvestment, so that's important too.
Okay.
So what we're suggesting, and what government, we're talking with 3 governments around the world at the moment about these processes, about whether they should or shouldn't make these processes compulsory.
Okay.
In audit processes around the world, you know, the big audit companies, they don't focus on the competitive nature of procurement. There's just nothing done about it. So
Sure.
what we're saying is, at no cost for those businesses, we can introduce those services which will make them more profitable and the government get a bigger tax take.
Sure.
So what we're saying to governments is you need to look carefully at the Uglii system and what its impacts are going to be on your economy.
Yes.
They're going to be there. These tools will be there. They're there now, in fact.
Yes.
Okay, so, and they're exciting tools.
Yes.
And if governments can be smart enough to anticipate the benefits they're going to get out of that, then they can look at their economies much more optimistically.
Sure.
So Australians, for example, can look to paying these debts off well within their lifetimes,
Within your lifetime.
well within my lifetime, yeah, rather than being so long-winded and taking such a long time to pay off. And the importance of that, of course, is that the assumptions that they're making allow them to make other assumptions about investment in infrastructure and all of the things that economies need.
Right.
They need to take a realistic approach to growth, because with the Uglii system they can grow their economies faster and they won't have the problems of inflation.
Sure. Now, you claim that the Uglii system will improve most economies by at least 1%. Is there some modelling that policymakers can do in their economy?
Look, we've done some modelling years ago on this claim, and we got that claim from economists. What the system is doing and what we're saying is you can expect at least a 1% increase in your economy, and that's really a dividend from the economy being more efficient, and business decisions and buying decisions being made more efficiently and faster. So it accelerates the amount of business, or increases the amount of business that happens over a given period. So that's a fairly simple dividend, and when we're working with governments around the world, they come back to us very quickly and say, we acknowledge that we can see that dividend, we can do our own sums and we can see that benefit. Some of them, of course, go on to make claims that are beyond that, and we're not saying that they're wrong, we're just saying that we don't understand your economy.
Yep.
So several governments have come back and said that they expect that their economy will grow because of Uglii a lot faster than the 1% that we're claiming. And we think that's right, okay?
Sure.
But we don't have the resources to model our system in their economy, so we just leave it at that. So yeah, we're very confident that it will at least produce that 1% increase in GDP.
Okay. And
do a lot better and have a lot of other beneficial effects.
Okay. So John, what impact would the subsystem Uglii brands have in regard to helping out economies?
Joe, there's a number of subsystems in our system, and the Uglii brand system is particularly powerful. It provides trademark owning businesses with some special privileges because we can do more with them because they are protected species.
Right.
So I think we've got 9 services that enhance the ownership of trademarks in an economy.
Sure.
And as well, we think that the system will stimulate a lot of businesses that don't own trademarks to get a trademark. They'll see these huge powerful services that they can get in the system and say, look, I've got to have a trademark, where do I get a trademark? Also, there'll be a bit of a problem. This is a bit of an aside, but we think that organisations, intellectual property organisations around the world will have problems with the rapid increase in applications for trademarks that the Uglii system will cause.
And you've actually met with WIPO over this, I believe.
Yes, I've been to Geneva and I've had meetings with WIPO about this, and they acknowledge that there might be a problem. Right. So we're sort of working together to see how we can ameliorate that problem. But yeah, we should flag to governments that there will be a problem and they need to start planning for a big increase in trademark applications, and that the applicants will be anxious to get approval for their trademarks.
Right.
Mostly trademark applicants are not anxious about the timeline. We have hundreds of trademarks around the world, Uglii has, and some of those can take years and years and years to be approved, and we don't care that much because we know we've got our intellectual property covered. In the Uglii system, we're saying you don't get into the Uglii system unless you've got your trademark approved, which is going to put a lot of pressure on government intellectual property organisations to speed up their work rates in getting these things through. And trademark processing skills are fairly specialised, so we think that they're going to have a bit of a problem with that. Okay. So we're sort of flagging to them that they need to be alert to that coming problem.
Yep.
From an economic point of view, there's a fairly strong correlation between ownership of trademarks and patents and the wealth of nations, to coin a phrase.
Yes.
So we think that we're going to help not only by providing these extra special services to trademark owning businesses, but we're going to cause a lot of businesses to start thinking intelligently about their intellectual property and protecting their intellectual property.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, I also believe Uglii have produced a new handbook for governments.
Joe, we're producing a new handbook. Not a new handbook, a handbook for government. So if anybody that's watching this video wants to get that handbook, they need to subscribe to our newsletter, which we put out a newsletter to government people every month or so.
Right.
And if they subscribe to that, we'll send them the handbook.
Okay, so they can subscribe to that by the Uglii website, which is www.uglii.com. And I believe if you go to the government newsletter area, there's actually a form there that you can fill out to register. And we'll actually pop a link on the screen here, and that'll also take you to the form. Okay, John, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Right, thank you.